Hey everyone, Rob here with Expedition Team here in the next installment on the gear series that I have put together for y'all. Before we get started, I want to make sure you guys all hit the like and subscribe button with the bell notification. We got a bunch of these videos here dropping. Want to make sure you guys are the first ones to know when they hit. We got some trip videos coming up. We have a couple trips on the schedule here for 2021. Want to make sure you guys get to see all those as soon as they get dropped. So what we have here is all the communication, the ways that I communicate on the trail. There's many ways that people can communicate. We have some super high tech, some that are great for emergencies but not for regular chit chat, and I'm going to go through all those. So first, what we all have a cell phone. Works great. When you're in cell phone communication, when we're most of us are off grid, these are unusable unless you if you get a cell phone booster, you can get a little bit more signal. They can usually boost 1 bar to 4 bars, but if you're out in the middle of Colorado in the mountains, doesn't matter how big your booster is, you're not getting anywhere. So these work great. Next that I have, and we use this most of the time, is FRS, GMRS radios. I got 2 here that we have to explain on how to use them. Now, two other ways that you can communicate is CB and amateur ham radio. For many years, I used CB radios. That was the way to communicate. Those come with a lot of limitations. First of all, they're underpowered. They're only 5 watts, and that's just not a lot of power. So when you're in a group and you're in the woods, you might not be able to hear the person in front of you. And there's a lot of limitations between you and you're relying on other people. So one thing you have to do is you have to make sure that your antenna is properly grounded and tuned. So on some of the Fire Stick and CB antennas, there's a little red cap. Take the cap off, and you put an SWR meter, and you have to tweak this little this wheel, and it goes up and down, and that's what changes the tuning of the radio. You would have to tune the radio for almost every different configuration, even between a hardtop and a soft top of the Jeep. The fiberglass of the hardtop and the metal frame of the soft top has different interfering with how it communicates. And then if you live in road salt areas like I am in Northeast Ohio, while we can't have a lot of nice things, the antenna will rust and it will lose its grounding, and it's unusable. So there'll be a lot of people in your group who might not do that, and you can't hear a word they're saying. So I was one of the first to move away from CB when I did a trip in 2016, I think, when I got 2016 when I got back from that trip. The CB got pulled out of the Jeep. I was able to sell it with all the SWR meter because I really didn't need that for the GMRS, and been really happy with the change. For some groups, Easter Jeep Safari and just up until this year, Jeep Jamboree required CB radio, so I had a handheld CB. That still didn't work well. Barely hear 2 or 3 Jeeps in front of me. I just don't think it's a real good form of communication. And on the other extreme from CB is amateur and ham radio. I think those are really fantastic setups. They take first of all, you have to take a test. Written test, and there's I believe 3 levels of the amateur radio level, depending on that limits on what bands you can work on, how powerful the radios you can do, and people talk all over the world. They're able to use the shortwave of that and bounce it off the ionosphere. And as long as you have a big, powerful radio at your house, you can almost talk to anyone in the world. Space Station has a ham radio on board, so you can talk to them. Because of the testing and the complexity of those systems, you can do a lot. You can get into them. You can manipulate them. You need a computer, and and I'm a big high tech guy, That was just a little too much for me. So I went with the FRS GMRS radio. If you operate on the FRS family share radio bands, you do not need a license. If you want to operate on the GMRS bands, you do need a license. That's because it's the International Communications Association. They've made that where you have to have a license. Some states you have to. In some countries, it requires a test as the amateur ham radio. FCC in the United States, it's just a $70 5-year fee, and that covers everybody in your household, your husband, wife, kids, and whatnot. So it's it's you just go to the FCC website. I'll put a link in the description below, and also in a couple of other videos, when I go into the how to use the various GMRS radios that we're using in our Jeeps, I have a little bit more description on how to go through the process of that. So those videos will be in the link below. So what we have here are two different ones. So I'll talk about this one. This is what I have in my Jeep. It's the Midland MXT 400. It is a 40-watt GMRS radio. I think this is a fantastic radio. Some limitations is that this has to be hardwired directly to the battery. You cannot run it off of a cigarette lighter. And it doesn't come with a small magnetic mount antenna. So I'm running this with the Midland 6-meter cable and their 6 dB antenna. That is the setup that I have on my Jeep. Gets about 6 to 12 miles of range. I think they advertise a little bit more than that, but that's a little bit more ideal conditions. But realistically, being in the woods, this is a fantastic platform to use. We also have D in the group. He has the MXT 275. That's a 15-watt radio. It's concealable, so you can conceal the radio under the dash, and then everything works on the microphone. Fantastic radio, just a little bit less power. So I want the more powerful one. So this is my best form of communication. One thing that I have noticed, even with using the CB versus using a phone, when you're in a convoy, even if you're with one other person, you're more likely just to have a random conversation. I think it's a mental game. You have more of a random conversation with two-way radios versus picking up the phone. If you're on the highway, you can pick up the phone and talk on the phone. It's a lot clearer, but it's just nice. You just have random. That's what I found out. We just have random conversations about random stuff. As if to me, it's almost as if we're sitting next to each other or sitting by the fire. Works really well. And then in here, this is the Midland X Talker radio. I really like this because it comes with a hard case. So if when you're in the Jeep, I can just throw this in the Jeep. And it comes with 2 walkie-talkies. These have become very, very popular around the U.S. I've done a couple cruises with family and friends, and we brought these on there, and a lot of people use these. And it was very surprising. These are only 5 watts, but we were on a fairly large cruise ship, and our stateroom was towards the front and on the left side of the boat, and some of our party was on the other side of the boat in the back on the right side of the boat. Through all that metal, we were still able to communicate. So it works. These worked really well for that. Working around camp. If you have the kids, if you're at a campground, the kids, you can give this to one of the kids, and they can go run and work and play, and then you can keep in contact with them. One thing that I've used is I picked up one of their handheld mics, and it just plugs in the radio. I can then put the radio on my waist or in a pocket, and I put this up here on my shoulder. I can just talk into it like this. I don't have to pull the whole radio up. For some reason, I really like this form of communication. Using this for spotting is a fantastic tool. Nice, clear communications, and you're not having to yell over an engine, or you can be a little bit further down the trail, and you can tell the driver, which way to turn or what's going on the trail. For photography, it's also worked really well. When I did the T-33 crash site video trail with my buddy, he had one of these. He'd tell me, hey, I'm running up ahead. He's around the corner. I say, hey, I'm coming around. He can start shooting, and it worked really well. So this is a great. I've really enjoyed having the handheld walkie-talkies. They are only 5 watts, so you're not going to be able to have fantastic communications. You're not going to get long distance talk out of that. So if you're, but in people in groups have just used these instead of hardwiring a radio into their vehicle. They'll just grab these radios. I think these radios are like $50, and you get 2 of them charging and all that type of stuff. So it's a very, very cheap way. When you use the FRS, you don't need a license, but these also operate on the GMRS, which is the higher channel numbers. You do need the license for that. So the last 2 ways of communication is satellite communications. Here I have a Garmin inReach Explorer Plus. I have this hardwired and cradled in my Jeep, so I can always use it as a backup. One thing I like about this is that it has an SOS button. It's under a protective guard here. So if something were to happen, you just flip that switch, and the cavalry gets the call, and they head your way. I use it as backup for tracking. So I use the Gaia app on my phone. Even if I don't have cell coverage, I'll download the maps to my phone. I can see where I'm going, and then it also tracks. But this is also another backup way of tracking. Because it's satellite, I pay a monthly fee, and I get unlimited upload tracking. So I could send to friends and family a link, and they can track me. I believe it sends a cookie crumb every 10 minutes or so they can get a general idea of where I'm at. I also have the ability to message. So I could message through here with the keypad. They have an app for the phone. So I've actually left this in the Jeep, and I'll turn my phone on. It'll connect to my phone. I'll be in my tent or at camp, and I could text people, hey, we're at camp. We're all safe. Hey, can you give me some weather? It does have some weather features. It's very general. So I've been able to text some friends, hey, can you look at the radar image to see what you see? I've been really, really happy with this. I think my wife was real happy because when I'd go off-grid, she wouldn't know where I am or if something happened. We had no way of communicating. So it's a fairly cheap plan. I think I'm paying like $10 or $15 a month, and it's a real nice thing to have. The last form of communication that I don't have is satellite telephone. So this works on the same Iridium system as this, but it's an actual phone. If I were to be doing more off-grid stuff, I think maybe I'd have to purchase one, but for limited I do. Text messaging works for me. If I were to do a big trip somewhere, you can rent sat phones fairly inexpensively. I found on the web, and you get limited data plans. But honestly, if I'm using a sat phone, it's a dire emergency. I'm not going to be using a sat phone to call a friend or family just to say hi. I'll be calling if we need medical advice or medical help and an emergency situation. So this is all the communication stuff that we have. I'm really, really happy. I think overall, GMRS, FRS communication is the best way of communicating. It's very clear communications, $70 license fee, that's all you need. And there's multiple ways. I mean, you can just use the handhelds, you get the 15 watt, and then they have this bigger one. This one, the MXT 400, does take up a little space in the vehicle. I know people have concealed them in the armrest, center console, and then rewired the hand mic, and then put an external speaker. There's a lot of ways that you can do, you can set these up. But like I said, I've been using GMRS FRS communications for almost 5 years now, and when I left CB, I never looked back. Going into amateur radio, maybe that's something in the future. But for me, my thought process on that is, like, say you're in Ouray, Colorado. You're in the bottom of the valley. You're not, even with that amateur radio, there are some repeaters out there, but you might not be able to reach that repeater, so you're not able to talk to the outside world. Moab, Utah might be a little bit different. I'm not real sure on the repeaters network and all that, because I don't have those licenses and I haven't looked into that. But if you want to go those ways, I know a lot of overlanders are going that way, and even they still use it for Jeep to Jeep communications. So this is all, like I said, this is all the forms of communication I have. I have 3 forms of communication, 4, including the handhelds. But make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We got a bunch of videos coming up this year. We got some trips planned. It's going to be a real fun year. So hope you're doing well. Stay safe.